The sound of shattering glass echoes through my boutique as Isabella hurls another designer handbag across the stockroom. I close my eyes and count to 10, reminding myself that I didn't spend 15 years building this business from nothing just to let my stepdaughter destroy it in 15 minutes. This collection is garbage, Isabella announces, her perfectly manicured hand waving dismissively at the carefully curated spring line I'd spent months sourcing. Daddy's friends wouldn't be caught dead carrying these. I'm Talia, and 6 months ago, I made what I'm starting to think might be the biggest mistake of my life. I married into the McCormick family. Don't get me wrong, I love Reed. He's everything I could want in a husband. It's his daughter who's making me question everything. Those bags are handcrafted by artisans in Italy, I explain, keeping my voice steady. They're exclusive pieces that, whatever. Isabella cuts me off, pulling out her phone. I need $50,000 for the wedding florist. Harold says we absolutely must have imported peonies for the centerpieces. My stomach drops. $50,000? For flowers? Don't be so provincial, Talia. She rolls her eyes, already tapping away at her screen. I've already told Harold yes, just transfer the money to my account like usual. Like usual. As if my boutique is her personal ATM. I think about the long nights I spent sleeping on a cot in this very stockroom, saving every penny to keep my dream alive. About the time I lived on ramen noodles for 3 months straight to make payroll during the recession. Isabella, we need to talk about your spending. I start, but she's already heading for the door, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors. Oh my God, you sound just like my last stepmother. She pauses at the threshold, throwing me a look that could freeze hell. And we both know how that ended. The bell above the door chimes as she exits, leaving me alone with the mess she's made. I pull out my phone and dial Penny's number. Let me guess, my best friend answers on the first ring. Hurricane Isabella just blew through? She wants 50 grand for wedding flowers. I sink into my office chair, surveying the damage. That's on top of the 100,000 she's already blown through this month. Girl, you need to tell Reed, Penny says. This is getting out of control. I've tried. I massage my temples, feeling a headache coming on. He just says she's stressed about the wedding and to let her have this moment. Her moment doesn't need to bankrupt you, Penny points out. What does Noah think about all this? My brother's voice echoes in my head from our conversation last week. You're too soft, Tal. She's walking all over you because you let her. Before I can respond, my office door opens and Reed walks in, looking handsome in his tailored suit. My heart still skips a beat when I see him, even after everything. There's my beautiful wife, he says, leaning down to kiss me. His smile fades when he sees my expression. What's wrong? Isabella was just here, I begin carefully. Reed, we need to discuss. His phone buzzes, and he holds up a finger. Sorry, honey, I need to take this, but listen. Isabella mentioned something about wedding flowers. Just handle it, okay? Whatever she needs, I'll make it up to you. He's gone before I can protest, leaving behind only the lingering scent of his expensive cologne. I stare at the broken glass on the floor, at the scattered inventory that represents thousands in potential profits, and something inside me shifts. My phone pings with a notification. It's an email from Isabella to Harold, the wedding planner, CCing me on the payment details for the flowers. The amount has somehow grown to 75,000. That's it, I mutter, opening my laptop. Time to see exactly where my money's been going these past few months. Penny's voice comes through the phone I'd forgotten was still connected. Tal, you still there? Yeah, I reply, fingers flying over the keyboard as I access the boutique's accounts. But I'm done playing nice stepmommy. If Isabella wants to treat my life's work like her personal piggy bank, she's about to learn what happens when you break things that don't belong to you. What are you going to do? I pause, watching as the transaction history loads on my screen. I'm going to give her exactly the wedding she deserves. Another email notification pops up. Isabella demanding I process the payment immediately. I click delete and smile for the first time today. She has no idea what's coming. The numbers on my screen don't lie, but I check them again anyway. $250,000 in unauthorized transfers over the past 3 months. My hands shake as I scroll through the transactions, each one like a knife in my gut. You need to see this, I tell Noah over the phone. Can you come by the boutique? 20 minutes later, my brother's examining my laptop screen, his usual easy smile replaced by a deep frown. She's forging your signature on these transfers, Tal. That's straight up fraud. I know. I pull up another document. Look at this email chain. She's been corresponding with vendors using my business email account, authorizing payments I never approved. Noah whistles low. Does Reed know? Before I can answer, the boutique's front door chimes. Isabella saunters in, followed by her friend Skylar. They're giggling about something until Isabella spots me behind the counter. Finally, I've been trying to reach you all morning, Isabella says, her voice sharp. The flower payment still hasn't gone through. That's because I didn't approve it, I reply, standing straighter. We need to talk about these unauthorized transfers, Isabella. Skylar's eyes widen, and she takes a small step back. Maybe I should wait outside. No, stay, Isabella commands, then turns to me. What unauthorized transfers? Daddy said I could use the boutique account for wedding expenses. Reed said you could use some funds, within reason, I correct her, not empty out my business accounts. Isabella laughs, but there's no humor in it. Your business accounts. Last I checked, you married into our family. Everything here is technically Daddy's anyway. Noah steps forward, his presence solid and reassuring beside me. That's not how it works, Isabella. The boutique belongs to Talia. She built it before she met your father. And who are you supposed to be? Isabella sneers. I'm her brother, and I'm also a financial advisor who knows fraud when he sees it. Isabella's perfectly composed face cracks for just a second. Fear flickers in her eyes before she masks it with contempt. Whatever, I'm calling Daddy. She pulls out her phone, manicured nails clicking against the screen. Go ahead, I say quietly. While you're at it, explain why you've been forging my signature and accessing accounts you're not authorized to use. Skylar gasps. Bella, you said Talia was handling all the payments. Shut up, Sky, Isabella snaps, then forces a smile as she puts the phone to her ear. Daddy, you need to come to the boutique right now. Talia's being impossible about the wedding expenses. 20 tense minutes later, Reed arrives, looking harried. What's going on? I was in the middle of a meeting. Show him, Noah tells me. I turn my laptop around. Reed, look at these transactions. She's trying to ruin my wedding. Isabella cuts in, tears suddenly streaming down her face. She's always been jealous of me, of our family's position. Now she's making up lies about me stealing. Making up lies. I pull up the email chain. Here's you impersonating me to vendors. Here's a forged signature on a bank transfer. Here's... Enough, Reed raises his hands. Isabella, is this true? Daddy, please, she sobs. You said I could use the money. I said you could have reasonable wedding expenses covered. Reed's voice is dangerously quiet. Not commit fraud. I think, Noah interjects, we should all sit down with the accountants and go through these transactions in detail. Isabella's tears dry up instantly. This is ridiculous. I'm leaving. No, you're not, Reed says firmly. You're going to sit down right now and explain exactly what you've done. Fine, Isabella shouts, mask finally cracking completely. You want to know what I did? I took what I deserved. What's a few $100,000 to this family anyway? Daddy spends that much on a weekend in Vegas. The boutique falls silent. Skylar looks mortified. Noah shakes his head. Reed's face has gone pale. I think, I say into the silence, we should continue this discussion at the house, with our lawyers present. Isabella's laugh turns hysterical. Lawyers? Really? You're going to sue me, your precious stepdaughter, over a few wedding expenses? I meet her eyes steadily. No, Isabella, I'm going to hold you accountable, maybe for the first time in your life. She grabs her purse and storms toward the door, pausing only to spit out, "You'll regret this. Nobody comes between me and my wedding. Nobody." As the door slams behind her, I notice an email notification pop up on my screen. It's from Isabella to Harold, the wedding planner, sent just minutes ago. "Proceed with everything as planned. I don't care what it costs. Someone will pay for it all one way or another." I forward the email to my lawyer, then look at Reed. "We need to talk." "You're not actually going through with this, are you?" Penny asks, watching me sort through the stack of financial documents spread across my dining room table. "The wedding's in 3 days. That's exactly why I have to do it now." I hold up a bank statement covered in highlighted transactions. "Look at this." She's even billing personal shopping sprees as wedding decorations. Noah enters with his laptop, setting it beside the papers. "I've got something you need to see, Tal." He pulls up a video file. "Security footage from the boutique. Watch this." The grainy footage shows Isabella entering, after hours, using a key she shouldn't have. She goes straight to my office, sits at my computer, and starts typing. "When was this?" I lean closer to the screen. "Last week. I had the IT guy check your computer logs. She's been accessing your email, sending authorizations to vendors, and deleting the records." Penny whistles. "That's next level crazy." My phone buzzes. A text from Reed. "Can we talk?" "Isabella's devastated." "Devastated," I read aloud, laughing without humor. "She's devastated that she got caught, maybe." "What did Reed say when you showed him everything?" Penny asks. "He's in denial. Keeps saying there must be some misunderstanding." I start typing a response, but delete it. "He's at Isabella's place now, probably letting her manipulate him again." Noah closes his laptop. "You know what you have to do, sis." "The video presentation at the reception." I nod. "Everything's ready?" "Almost. Just need to add this new footage." The doorbell rings, making us all jump. Through the window, I spot Melina, Reed's sister, standing on the porch. I open the door, and she rushes in without waiting for an invitation. "You won't believe what I just heard," she says, dropping her designer bag on the table. "I was at the country club with Skylar, and she told me Isabella's been lying to everyone about the wedding budget." "What do you mean?" I ask. "She's been telling Thomas's family that you and Reed are paying for everything, because you insisted. That it's your wedding gift to them." Melina's eyes flash with anger. "She's made you look like some desperate stepmother trying to buy her way into the family." My hands clench into fists. "Of course she has. There's more," Melina continues. "She's been spreading rumors that you're jealous of her relationship with Reed, that you're trying to come between them." Noah stands up. "That's it. We're showing the video at the reception." "No," Penny interrupts. "You need to stop this before the wedding. Think about Thomas. He doesn't deserve to be humiliated in front of everyone. Thomas needs to see who he's really marrying." I counter. "And everyone else needs to see who Isabella really is." My phone buzzes again. Another text from Reed. "Coming home. We need to talk." "He's going to try to talk you out of this," Melina warns. "Isabella's got him wrapped around her finger." "Not this time," I say, gathering the documents. "Noah, finish the video." "Penny, I need you to." The front door opens, and Reed walks in. He stops short at the sight of all of us. "Family meeting?" he asks, attempting a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Just going over some interesting financial records," I reply. "Want to join us?" He sighs, loosening his tie. "Talia, honey, I know Isabella made some mistakes, but she's agreed to pay everything back. Can't we just move past this?" "Move past this?" Melina stands up. "Reed, your daughter committed fraud. She's been lying to everyone, including Thomas's family. She's young." Reed protests weakly. "She got carried away with the wedding planning." "She's 28 years old," I say, my voice steady. "And this isn't about the money anymore. This is about consequences. What are you planning?" He looks at the papers, the laptop, our faces. "The truth," I answer simply. "Everyone's going to know the truth." "You'll destroy her," Reed says quietly. "No," I correct him. She destroyed herself. I'm just making sure she can't destroy anyone else. My phone pings with an email notification. It's from Harold, the wedding planner, forwarding a message from Isabella. Don't worry about the budget anymore. I've taken care of everything. Talia won't be a problem after tomorrow. I show the email to Reed. His face pales as he reads it. Still want to defend her? I ask. He sinks into a chair, suddenly looking older than his years. Do what you have to do, he says finally. Just make it quick. I nod to Noah, who opens his laptop again. Let's finish this video. As we work, another email arrives, this time from Thomas's mother, thanking me profusely for my generous gift of paying for the entire wedding. Attached is a screenshot of a message from Isabella, claiming it was all Talia's idea. I add it to our evidence. 3 days until the wedding, and Isabella has no idea what's coming. The church is a masterpiece of white flowers and crystal decorations, exactly what you'd expect from a wedding that supposedly cost close to $500,000. I sit in the third row, watching Isabella float down the aisle in her designer gown, looking every bit the innocent bride. You okay? Penny whispers beside me. I nod slightly, feeling the USB drive in my clutch like a loaded weapon. The video is ready. Noah checked it 3 times this morning. Thomas stands at the altar, beaming at his bride with complete adoration. My stomach twists. He has no idea that the woman he's about to marry used stolen money to create this fairy tale. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. Penny squeezes my hand. We both stay silent. This isn't the time. Not yet. After the ceremony, I find Reed in the church vestibule. He hasn't spoken more than 2 words to me since yesterday. Last chance to stop this, he says quietly. Last chance for Isabella to come clean, I counter. He runs a hand through his silver hair. I talked to her again this morning. She swears she'll pay everything back. With what money, Reed? The money she's still stealing from my business. Before he can respond, Harold approaches us, tablet in hand. Talia, I just wanted to thank you again for being so generous with the budget. The reception venue looks absolutely stunning. I force a smile. I'm sure it does, Harold. Every penny well spent, right? He beams, oblivious to the tension. Isabella said you insisted on sparing no expense. Such a wonderful stepmother you are. As Harold walks away, Reed won't meet my eyes. Maybe she really does feel guilty, he suggests weakly. Let's find out. I head for the church exit, where limousines wait to take us to the reception. The grand ballroom of the country club is even more extravagant than the church. Crystal chandeliers sparkle above tables laden with imported flowers and custom place settings. A string quartet plays softly in the corner. Everything's set, Noah murmurs as he passes by. Videos queued up for right after the father-daughter dance. I spot Isabella holding court with her bridesmaids, Skylar among them. They're all laughing about something until Isabella sees me watching. She excuses herself and sashays over, enjoying the wedding, Talia. Her smile is pure venom. I hope you're taking notes. This is how real society events are done. Not like those little boutique parties you throw. It's certainly impressive, I agree. I especially like all the personal touches you've added with my money. Her smile doesn't waver. Careful, Talia. You wouldn't want to make a scene at my wedding. What would Daddy think? Don't worry about scenes, Isabella. I'm more interested in presentations. Something flickers in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe fear. But before she can respond, the DJ announces it's time for the father-daughter dance. I watch Reed lead Isabella onto the dance floor as Butterfly Kisses plays. They spin slowly, and for a moment, I see what Reed sees. His little girl, his princess. Then I remember the security footage of her sneaking into my office. The forged signatures, the lies. Melina appears at my elbow. Ready? Almost. I scan the room. Where's Thomas? By the bar with his parents. They're still gushing about your incredible generosity. The dance ends to applause. Isabella curtsies dramatically, blowing kisses to the crowd. Reed makes his way back to me, his expression troubled. What's wrong? I ask. She just told me she's already spent the money for next month's boutique inventory on the honeymoon. I stare at him. And, you're right, this has to stop. I signal to Noah, who heads for the DJ booth with the USB drive. Isabella's at the head table now, whispering with Thomas, probably feeding him more lies. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ announces, before dinner is served, we have a special presentation prepared by the family. Isabella's head snaps up. This isn't on her meticulously planned schedule. The lights dim. The giant screen behind the head table flickers to life. Isabella's own voice fills the ballroom. Of course Talia doesn't know. She's such an idiot. I've been forging her signature for months. The security footage plays next, showing her breaking into my office. Then the bank statements appear, highlighted transactions scrolling past as Isabella's emails to vendors flash on screen. The ballroom is dead silent, except for gasps and murmurs. Thomas's mother stands up, her face white with shock. Skylar covers her mouth with her hand. And Isabella. She's frozen in her seat, watching her carefully constructed world crumble on the giant screen before her. The lights come up, all eyes turn to the head table. Thomas slowly pushes his chair back, standing up. Isabella. His voice cracks. What is this? She opens her mouth, but for once, Isabella McCormick has nothing to say. The silence lasts exactly 3 seconds before Isabella finds her voice. It's all lies, she shrieks, jumping to her feet. Talia doctored those videos. She's trying to ruin my wedding because she's jealous. Jealous? I stand up slowly. Let's talk about the truth, Isabella. Show everyone your phone. Show them the banking app you used to transfer my money. Thomas turns to his new wife, his face ashen. Did you steal the money for our wedding? Of course not, baby. Isabella grabs his arm. Daddy, tell them I had permission. Reed steps forward, and for a moment, I think he might cave again. But he shakes his head. No more lies, Isabella. We found your hidden account. We have the proof. Mrs. Francis, Thomas's mother stands up, her voice shaking. You told us Talia insisted on paying for everything. You said it was her wedding gift. That's right. Isabella's mascara starts to run. She promised, and now she's trying to humiliate me. Noah clicks to the next slide. Isabella's email to Harold appears. Don't worry about telling Thomas where the money's coming from. His family is too middle class to understand how things work in our world anyway. Thomas jerks away from Isabella like he's been burned. Middle class? Is that what you think of my family? No, Thomas, please. She reaches for him, but he backs away. Skylar stands up from the bridesmaids' table. You told me Talia was handling all the payments. You made me lie to vendors. The room erupts in chaos. Guests start whispering. Phones come out, and Isabella's perfect wedding dissolves into a social media nightmare in real time. I can explain everything, Isabella screams over the growing noise. This is all a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I walk toward the head table, pulling out my phone. Should we call the police? Let them decide if fraud and theft are just misunderstandings. You wouldn't dare, but her voice wavers. Try me. Thomas's father, a respected judge, rises from his seat. I believe we've heard enough. Thomas, come with us. We need to discuss annulment options. Annulment? Isabella's voice rises to a shriek. No, Thomas, don't listen to them. I love you. Love me? Thomas laughs bitterly. You love my family's connections. That's what this was all about, wasn't it? Social climbing. That's not true. But Isabella's eyes dart around the room, calculating, still looking for an escape route. Melina steps forward. Should we show them the texts about Thomas's unfortunate background and how you plan to fix his family's image once you were married? Isabella lunges for her phone, but she's too late. The next slide is already playing. Screenshots of her messages to Skylar. Once I'm married, I'll have access to his trust fund. Then I can finally ditch these new money pretenders and live like I deserve. Thomas turns away, his shoulders shaking. His mother wraps an arm around him and leads him toward the exit. Half the guests follow, leaving their untouched dinner plates behind. "Daddy!" Isabella runs to Reed. "Do something. She's destroying everything." Reed looks at his daughter, really looks at her, maybe for the first time. "No, Isabella, you destroyed everything yourself." She spins around, mascara streaking down her face, and points at me. "This is your fault. You'll pay for this. I'll sue you for defamation." "With what evidence?" Noah asks calmly. "The truth is its own defense." Isabella grabs her champagne glass and hurls it at the screen. It shatters against her own frozen image, the one from the security footage showing her forging my signature. "I hate you," she screams at me. "I hate all of you." She runs for the exit, but stops dead when she sees the crowd of guests outside, phones raised, capturing her meltdown for posterity. "Isabella," I call after her, "the boutique's keys, now." Her hand shakes as she digs through her wedding purse and throws the keys at my feet. Then she pushes through the crowd and disappears into the night. The remaining guests stand in stunned silence. Harold, the wedding planner, looks like he might faint. Skylar is crying quietly in a corner. Reed touches my arm. "I'm so sorry," he whispers. "I should have seen it sooner." "Yes, I agree. You should have." Penny appears with my coat. "Want to get out of here?" I look around at the expensive decorations, the untouched food, the evidence of Isabella's theft still projected on the wall, all of it paid for with my money, my hard work. "Not yet," I say, turning to face the shocked crowd. "I think it's time for my own announcement, because while Isabella was busy planning her fraudulent fairy tale, I've been planning something else entirely. Something that will ensure she never gets her hands on my business again." I step up to the microphone, and the room falls silent once more. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight." I begin, my voice steady, despite the chaos of the last few minutes. "While this evening hasn't gone as planned, I have an announcement of my own to make." The remaining guests turn to face me. Phones still recording. Perfect. For 15 years, my boutique has been more than just a business. It's been my dream. A dream that someone tried to destroy for their own selfish gains. I pause, letting that sink in. But sometimes, when people try to break you, they only make you stronger. Noah gives me a thumbs up from the back of the room. Reed stands frozen, watching me intently. "I'm pleased to announce that next month, my boutique will be launching an exclusive partnership with the International Women's Artisan Collective. We'll be featuring handcrafted pieces from female entrepreneurs across the globe, with a portion of all proceeds going to support women-owned businesses in developing countries." Melina starts clapping, and others join in. I hold up my hand. "But that's not all. Thanks to some recent events, I've realized the importance of protecting what you've built. So tonight, I'm also announcing the creation of the Phoenix Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping women rebuild their businesses after financial fraud or theft." The doors burst open. Isabella storms back in, her wedding dress muddy at the hem. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" "Security," Harold calls weakly, but Isabella's already marching toward me. "You want to talk about fraud?" she snarls, grabbing the microphone. "Let me tell you all what kind of woman Talia really is. She married my father for his money. That's enough." Reed's voice cuts through the room like a whip. "Isabella, stop embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" She laughs hysterically. "Daddy, she just destroyed my wedding, my life." "No," Thomas says from the doorway. He's come back in. "You destroyed your own life, and you tried to destroy mine too." Isabella spins toward him. "Baby, please. Don't." He holds up his hand. "The police are outside. They'd like to talk to you about the fraud charges." The color drains from Isabella's face. "Police? But Daddy won't press charges. Will you, Daddy?" "The charges aren't coming from Reed," I say quietly. "They're coming from me, and from Thomas's parents, who wrote you quite a few checks based on your lies." Two police officers enter the ballroom. Isabella backs away from them, looking wildly around the room. This isn't fair. None of this is fair. You deserve consequences, I interrupt. For once in your life. The officers approach Isabella. One of them starts reading her rights. She struggles as they take her arms, her designer dress ripping at the shoulder. I'll get out, she shrieks, as they lead her away. And when I do, you'll be sorry, all of you. The doors close behind them, muffling her threats. The remaining guests stand in shocked silence. Well, Penny says brightly, who wants champagne? A nervous laugh ripples through the crowd. The string quartet, who've been frozen in place this whole time, tentatively begins to play again. Thomas approaches me slowly. I had no idea, he says, about any of it. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, I tell him. She fooled a lot of people. He nods, then turns to Reed. Sir, I don't even know what to say. Reed puts a hand on his shoulder. Go be with your family, son. We'll sort everything out later. As Thomas leaves, Reed turns to me. The Phoenix Foundation. When did you plan all this? While your daughter was planning her wedding, I reply. I had to do something productive with my anger. Ms. Carter, a reporter from the local paper approaches, notebook in hand. Could we get a statement about tonight's events? I smile. Of course. But first, let me tell you about the amazing women artisans I'll be working with. Hours later, after the last guests have gone and the staff is cleaning up, I sit at an empty table with Reed, Penny, Noah, and Melina. Well, Penny raises her glass. That was one hell of a wedding. To karma, Melina adds. To new beginnings, Noah suggests. Reed takes my hand under the table. Talia, I know I should have listened sooner. I just never wanted to believe. I know, I squeeze his hand. The question is, what happens now? Now, he looks around at the half-dismantled wedding decorations. Now we rebuild. Together, if you'll let me. My phone buzzes, a news alert. Isabella's arrest is already making headlines. Below, it is another alert. My boutique's website is crashing from too much traffic. I raise my glass. To rebuilding then, and to karma. We clink glasses as the last wedding flowers are cleared away, making room for whatever comes next. 3 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, I'm standing in my newly renovated boutique, surrounded by colorful hand-woven textiles and artisanal jewelry from around the world. The grand reopening is in full swing, and the place is packed. Another reporter wants to talk to you. Penny calls from near the entrance. This one's from Forbes. Send her back, I say, adjusting a display of hand-beaded bags from a women's cooperative in Guatemala. The reporter, a sharp-looking woman named Claire, doesn't waste time with pleasantries. Your story has captured national attention. How does it feel to turn a personal crisis into a movement? Before I can answer, the boutique's door chimes. Thomas walks in, looking much better than the last time I saw him. Excuse me, I tell Claire. We can continue this in a moment. Thomas meets me halfway across the store. I wanted to stop by before I leave town, he says. I got a job offer in Seattle. Fresh start, you know? How are you holding up? He manages a small smile. Better. The annulment went through yesterday. My parents wanted me to thank you again for testifying. Thomas, Reed emerges from my office, where he's been handling calls all morning. I didn't know you were coming by. Just saying goodbye, sir. Thomas straightens his shoulders, and returning this, he pulls out a check. It's everything my parents gave her for the wedding. We sold the gifts and liquidated the honeymoon reservations. Reed takes the check, then pulls Thomas into a surprise hug. Take care of yourself, son. You deserve better. After Thomas leaves, Melina rushes over. You need to see this, she says, holding up her phone. It's a social media post from Skylar, a photo of Isabella entering a courthouse, with the caption, "Karma comes for us all. I'm sorry I ever helped her lie." Speaking of karma, Noah joins us, tablet in hand. The DA just called. Isabella's taking a plea deal. She'll have to pay restitution and serve 6 months, plus probation. Only 6 months, Penny frowns. Plus community service, Reed adds quietly. At a women's shelter. The irony isn't lost on any of us. Claire the reporter clears her throat. Mr. McCormick, how do you feel about your daughter's sentencing? Reed looks at me, then back at the reporter. I feel like it's exactly what she needs. Sometimes love means letting people face the consequences of their actions. The boutique's door chimes again. This time it's a group of women from the International Artisan Collective, their arms full of new samples. Talia, Maria, their coordinator, hugs me warmly. The first shipment sold out in 2 days. We need to double the next order. Triple it, I say, leading them to the display area. And wait until you see where we're putting your pieces in the new store layout. New store? Claire perks up. You're expanding. 3 new locations, Noah confirms, all featuring work from women entrepreneurs worldwide. The Phoenix Foundation will provide microloans and mentorship programs. And security systems, Penny adds with a wink, really good ones. The afternoon flies by in a blur of interviews, sales, and celebrations. As the sun sets, I find myself in my office with Reed, looking at the framed article on my wall, From Fraud Victim to Philanthropist, How One Woman Turned Betrayal into Triumph. I got a letter from Isabella today, Reed says softly. She asked me not to show it to you. What did it say? That she's sorry, that she wants to make things right. He sighs. That she needs help. Do you believe her? I don't know, but I do know this. You showed her something she's never seen before. What's that? That actions have consequences, and that real strength isn't about taking what you want. It's about building something that matters. A knock at the door interrupts us. It's Maria with the International Artisan Collective. Talia, we have something to show you, she says excitedly. The women in our Guatemala cooperative named their newest design after you. They're calling it the Phoenix Collection. She holds up a stunning handbag, hand-woven in vibrant reds and golds. The tag reads, Rising from ashes, we soar together. It's perfect, I whisper, touching the intricate pattern. Reed wraps an arm around my waist, just like its namesake. Through the office window, I can see the boutique full of customers, reporters, and artisans. Penny's showing Claire the new collection. Noah's explaining the foundation's mission to a group of interested investors. Melina's helping a young entrepreneur fill out a loan application. This, I realize, is what victory really looks like. Not revenge, but renewal. Not destruction, but creation. Ready to go back out there? Reed asks. I pick up the Phoenix bag, more than ready. We've got work to do. The women's correctional facility looks exactly like I imagined. Stark and institutional. I follow the guard down a long hallway, my heels clicking against the linoleum floor. She's not expecting you, the guard says, stopping at a metal door. Are you sure about this? I nod. After all these months, it's time. Isabella sits at a metal table in the visitation room, wearing a beige jumpsuit that's a far cry from her designer wardrobe. She looks up as I enter, and for a moment, I see genuine shock on her face. What are you doing here? She asks, her voice hoarse. I place a folder on the table between us. I brought you something. She doesn't touch it. If this is about more charges, it's an application, I interrupt. For the Phoenix Foundation's rehabilitation program, for when you get out. Isabella stares at me like I've grown a second head. Is this some kind of joke? No joke. I slide the folder closer. The foundation helps women rebuild their lives after financial mistakes, even deliberate ones. Why would you help me? Her eyes narrow. After everything? Because revenge wasn't the point, Isabella. Change was. She opens the folder, slowly, like it might bite her. I don't understand. Your father showed me your letters. All of them. Including the ones where you talked about wanting to start your own business someday. Those were private, she whispers. They were honest. Maybe the first honest things you've written in years. She looks down at the application, then back at me. Does Daddy know you're here? Reed knows. So does Thomas. At Thomas's name, she flinches. How is he? Happy. His tech startup in Seattle is doing well. Isabella's fingers trace the foundation's logo on the application, a phoenix rising from flames. I really messed up, didn't I? Yes, you did. I lean forward. But you can either let that define you, or you can use it to change. Why should I trust you? But there's less venom in her voice now, more uncertainty. Because I'm offering you something no one else has, a chance to earn your way back, not with lies or manipulation, but with actual work. She's quiet for a long moment, reading through the application. It says here participants have to do community service at women's shelters and financial literacy programs, teaching others what you learned the hard way. And if I complete the program, then you'll have the skills and support to start your own legitimate business. But you'll have to build it yourself, brick by brick, no shortcuts. Isabella wipes at her eyes with the heel of her hand. I don't deserve this chance. Maybe not, but you're getting it anyway. The question is, what will you do with it? She picks up the pen I brought, then hesitates. What about everyone else, the people I hurt? That's part of the program too. Making amends takes time. She starts filling out the application, her handwriting shaky but determined. I'm sorry, she says suddenly, not looking up. For everything. I know. When she finishes, I take the application and stand. Someone from the foundation will be in touch about next steps. Talia, she calls as I reach the door. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. Don't thank me yet. The hard part's still coming. Outside the prison, Reed is waiting in the car. How did it go? I show him the completed application. She's ready to try. And you're ready to let her? The foundation isn't about holding grudges. It's about building bridges. I buckle my seatbelt, even the scary ones. Reed starts the car. You're a better person than most. No, I correct him. I just finally understand the difference between justice and vengeance. My phone buzzes with a text from Penny. New artisan collection just arrived. Wait till you see what they've created. Another message pops up. This one from Noah. 5th location's paperwork is ready. You're officially going national, sis. I smile, thinking about the journey from that first confrontation in my boutique to now. About how sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best changes we make. Ready to head back to the shop? Reed asks. Actually, I pull up the foundation's website on my phone, where Isabella's story is already being added to our testimonials. I think I'm ready for whatever comes next. Because that's the thing about rising from ashes. You never know how high you might soar, or who might end up rising with you. The guard waves us through the prison gates, and I don't look back. There's too much ahead to keep watching what's behind.
My name is Grace, and I'm a 35-year-old financial advisor. That's when I crossed paths with Jonathan, who would eventually become my ex-husband. I vividly recall our first meeting. He entered my office burdened with a hefty pile of documents and a look of concern. Grace, right? He greeted, extending his hand. I'm Jonathan. I've been told you're the expert for financial dilemmas. With a smile, I responded, That's what they say. Let's take a look and see how we can untangle yours. Jonathan was a tall man, his short brown hair complementing his warm, smiling eyes, which radiated friendliness even when his lips didn't. As we delved into his paperwork, our conversation veered from the dry world of numbers and taxes to our favorite movies, musical preferences, and even lively debates about the town's best pizza. Jonathan's relaxed demeanor made the time fly by, and before we knew it, he remarked, I never imagined sorting out my finances could be this fun. Jokingly, I mentioned my magic touch, to which he laughed and suggested, How about a coffee to thank you for making this experience far less dreadful than anticipated? That coffee soon blossomed into dinners and then weekend trips away together. Within 7 months, Jonathan proposed, and I accepted without a second thought. It all felt like a whirlwind romance, but it was perfect for us. Our wedding was modest, yet enchanting. As we exchanged vows, I felt a profound sense of having found my lifelong partner. Jonathan's mother, Mary, was there too, her stern demeanor softening as she whispered about her eagerness for grandchildren. Initially, married life was idyllic. Jonathan pursued his career in real estate while I continued at my firm. We enjoyed cozy dinners, movie nights, and leisurely strolls. Yet, the serenity began to fade when the subject of children emerged more frequently, particularly urged on by Mary. Her casual comments soon turned into a relentless campaign for grandchildren, phone calls to inquire about my pregnancy status, and remarks during visits about how a child would complete the family became routine. Although Jonathan tried to dismiss it with humor, saying, "Mom, give us some time," the pressure steadily mounted. At first, I strove to be patient, understanding her excitement about becoming a grandmother. However, her incessant interference began to take its toll. One evening, I confided in Jonathan, "Your mom needs to give us some space. It feels like she's a bigger part of our marriage than we are." Jonathan seemed uneasy, but dismissed my concerns, attributing it to her enthusiasm. Mary's influence increasingly encroached on our lives, extending beyond just her fixation on grandchildren. She had opinions on everything: how we managed our money, what we ate. One Saturday morning, while Jonathan and I were enjoying breakfast, his phone rang. It was Mary, and Jonathan, as usual, put her on speaker. "Jonathan, dear, are you both eating well? Remember, a healthy diet is essential for conception," she instructed authoritatively. Jonathan chuckled and reassured her, while I managed a strained smile, feeling overwhelmed by her pervasive presence in our lives. The situation was intensifying, and it felt as though she was monitoring our every move, adding layers of stress that I never anticipated in our marriage. When Mary's visits became more frequent, one evening she arrived unannounced, laden with a stack of parenting books. "Grace, you should start reading these. It's never too early to prepare," she declared as she placed the books heavily on the coffee table. I shot a glance at Jonathan, hoping he would intervene, but he only shrugged. "Thanks, Mary. We'll take a look," I replied, mustering a semblance of gratitude. Her visits soon turned into a regular pattern, almost as if she was keeping a close eye on us to ensure we were perfectly primed for parenthood. Each time she broached the subject of babies, Jonathan would simply nod and echo her sentiments. One night, after yet another of Mary's overbearing visits, I reached my breaking point. "Jonathan, we need to talk," I said, my voice laden with frustration. "What's up?" he asked, eyes still glued to the TV. "It's your mom. She's overwhelming us with this baby talk. We can hardly enjoy our time together without her interference," I expressed. Jonathan finally turned to face me. "She's just excited, Grace. She means well." "Excited or obsessed?" I retorted. "It feels like she's the third wheel in our marriage." Jonathan sighed. "She's my mom. What do you want me to do? Tell her to stop caring?" "It's not about caring, Jonathan. It's about respecting our space and our decisions. Can't you see that?" Jonathan remained silent, his attention shifting back to the TV, signaling the end of our conversation but not the issue. If anything, things escalated. Mary's visits grew even more frequent, and her advice became increasingly intrusive. "You two should take a vacation. Just relax. It'll help with conception," she suggested one day. Another time, she offhandedly mentioned, maybe Grace should quit her job to reduce stress. It felt as though she was dictating our lives, with Jonathan passively allowing it. I began to feel like an outsider in my own marriage. The warmth and understanding that once connected Jonathan and me were fading, overshadowed by Mary's dominating presence. The relentless pressure about having a baby was straining us both, leading to more arguments and a noticeable evaporation of the romance that once filled our home. Yet, I clung to the hope that things would improve, that somehow we would find our way back to each other. But then, everything changed one evening. Jonathan came home unusually late, his demeanor more somber than I had ever seen. I was in the kitchen, hurriedly preparing dinner when I noticed his state. "Jonathan, is everything okay?" I asked, concerned. He collapsed into a kitchen chair, burying his face in his hands. "We need to talk, Grace," he said, his voice heavy with gravity. A chill ran down my spine as I sat opposite him, my heart pounding with apprehension. "It's about us trying to have a baby," he began, not meeting my eyes. "Remember those tests we went for?" He finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine, filled with an emotion I couldn't immediately place. "A few weeks ago, Jonathan and I decided to undergo a fertility checkup, hoping it might ease Mary's relentless pressure. When Jonathan came home that evening, his expression was somber, and I knew the results were in. "It's not you, Grace. It's me," he said, taking a deep breath. He explained that the doctor had diagnosed him with a low sperm count, making it unlikely for him to father a child. The news hit us hard, a mix of relief, sadness, and confusion swirling within me. "What do you mean?" I asked, reaching out to squeeze his hand, seeking to provide some solace. Jonathan's voice broke as he replied, "I can't father a child, Grace." He withdrew his hand, a gesture that felt like a wall going up between us. "I won't go through treatment. It's not something I'm prepared to face." I was stunned by his refusal. "But why? If there's even a slight chance, shouldn't we try?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. "It's my decision, Grace. I just can't," he replied firmly, his finality piercing the air. I couldn't wrap my head around his resistance. The Jonathan I knew was always resilient, willing to face challenges head-on. "Please don't let this drive a wedge between us. We can face this together," I pleaded. He stood, avoiding my gaze. "I need some time alone to think," he said, and with those words he left the kitchen, leaving me in a whirlwind of unanswered questions and rising fears. His outright refusal to consider any options was baffling. Was his pride really standing in the way of our future together? The following days were tense. Jonathan barely spoke, and when he did, his words were clipped and cold. The growing distance felt like a chasm in the foundation of our marriage, widening with each silent meal and unshared night. Then, one evening, the fragile state of our union cracked open irreversibly. Jonathan returned home late again. I lay in bed, feigning sleep, when I heard him on the phone. "Yes, Mom, I got the results. No, I don't want treatment. I'll figure something out," he whispered into the phone, a conversation he hadn't had with me. It felt like a betrayal, not just of our intimacy, but of our vows. Mary's influence was more invasive than I had ever realized, and as I lay there, tears streamed down my face, marking the silence of our room. Our home had become a shell of the warm, loving environment it once was. We were like two strangers, merely sharing the same space, the remnants of our love lost in the shadow of his mother's overbearing influence. Just when I thought our situation couldn't get any more strained, life threw me an unexpected curveball. I had been feeling unwell, attributing it to stress at first, but then I missed my period. Despite the recent news about Jonathan's condition, a part of me dared to hope. I bought a pregnancy test, and sitting in the bathroom waiting for the result was agonizing. Then, the indicator showed positive. I was pregnant. For a moment, I was in disbelief. After all the discussions about infertility, this seemed like a miraculous glimmer of hope amidst the ruins of our marriage. That evening, as Jonathan walked in, his usual late self, barely acknowledging my presence, I knew I had to tell him. Taking a deep breath, I approached him. "Jonathan, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling with the weight of our future. He looked up, weary. "What is it now, Grace?" "I'm pregnant," I blurted out, the words hanging between us in a heavy silence. Then he let out a bitter, cynical laugh. "Pregnant? How? The doctor said I can't." "I don't know, but the test is positive. We're going to have a baby," I said, the tears starting to well up in my eyes. He stood up suddenly, anger flashing in his eyes. "This is some kind of joke, right? You're trying to trap me?" I was shocked. "Trap you? Jonathan, I'm telling you we're going to have a baby. Our baby." He paced the room, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "No, this can't be. You must have cheated. That's it, isn't it? You cheated on me." I felt as though I had been physically struck. "Cheated? How can you even say that? I've been nothing but faithful to you." He wasn't listening. Consumed by his rage and disbelief, he shouted, "Get out! I want you out of this house." "Jonathan, please, let's talk about this. We can go to the doctor and get a confirmation," I pleaded, but it was like talking to a wall. He stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. That night, I slept in the guest room, my mind swirling with emotions. The next day, Jonathan was gone before I woke up. His mother, Mary, showed up instead. The look on her face was a mix of anger and disgust. "You should be ashamed of yourself, Grace, trapping my son with another man's child," she spat. "I didn't cheat on Jonathan. This child is his." I defended myself firmly. She laughed coldly. "Do you take me for a fool? My son can't have children. You're just a gold digger trying to secure your future." I was stunned by her cruelty. "This is Jonathan's child. I've never been with anyone else." She moved closer, her voice venomous. "You have 2 weeks to pack your things and leave, and don't even think about asking for alimony or child support. You won't get a dime from us." Mary's ultimatum was the last straw. I knew I couldn't continue living in a house filled with resentment and false accusations. It was time to take control of my life, for my sake and for the baby's. First things first, I filed for divorce. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary. Jonathan and his mother tried to make it difficult. They wanted a piece of everything I had, claiming it was their right, but I had a strong case. Everything I owned, all my savings and property were mine long before Jonathan entered my life. Their attempts to grab what wasn't theirs failed miserably. As for alimony, I didn't ask for a penny. I wanted no financial ties to Jonathan, no reason for him or his mother to interfere in my life again. I was determined to start anew, free from their toxicity. I found a modest apartment, not too fancy, but cozy enough to be a fresh start. Packing up my things from the house was bittersweet. Every photo and every piece of furniture had a memory attached to it, but I was ready to leave them behind. The day I moved out, Jonathan was conspicuously absent. Maybe he couldn't face me, or perhaps he just didn't care. Either way, it didn't matter. I left the keys on the counter and closed that chapter of my life. The first few nights in my new apartment were the hardest. The silence was overwhelming, and the reality of my situation often brought me to tears. But I found comfort in the little life growing within me. Every night, I talked to my unborn child, filling my small apartment with whispers of hope and love. Gradually, what had felt like a sanctuary started to feel like a true home. My daily routines brought comfort, and my connection with my unborn child strengthened with each passing day. One afternoon, as I sorted through some old boxes, I stumbled upon a photograph of Jonathan and me in better times. A pang of sadness briefly washed over me, but it quickly gave way to relief. That chapter of my life was firmly behind me. Just then, my phone rang. It was Jonathan. "Grace, I've received the divorce papers," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I'm glad they reached you. Please handle the formalities," I replied, striving for calm. There was a pause before he added, "I won't bother you about the baby. You won't hear from me again." It was a cold farewell, but it brought closure. Hanging up, I realized that in my solitude, I had discovered a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. I was ready to face the future, not as Jonathan's estranged wife, but as a strong, independent woman and a devoted mother. On a quiet evening, as I sat reading a magazine, my 5-year-old son, Arthur, played with his toys on the floor. Our peace was interrupted by a knock at the door. Puzzled, I answered, finding a woman on my doorstep whose eyes reflected a familiar sorrow. "Hi, Grace, it's been a long time," she said hesitantly. It took me a moment, but then I recognized her as Pamela, a friend from my past life with Jonathan. "Pamela, yes, it has been. What brings you here?" I asked. She looked uncomfortable, glancing at Arthur, who was now peeking curiously from behind my legs. "I thought you should know about Jonathan," she said, her voice soft. Just hearing his name after all these years sent a shiver through me. "What about him?" I asked, maintaining a steady tone. Pamela sighed. "He's not doing well, Grace. After you left, things went downhill for him. He became an alcoholic, remarried a few years ago, and had another child. But the boy was born with disabilities, and Jonathan couldn't handle it. He left them, divorced his wife, and now he's refusing to pay child support. He's in legal trouble. The news struck me, but not in the way Pamela might have expected. I felt a profound sadness, not for Jonathan, but for his child and the woman he had left behind. "That's terrible," I said softly. Pamela nodded. "I thought you should know, given your past with him." I appreciated her concern, but knew I had to maintain boundaries. "Thank you for telling me, Pamela, but that part of my life is over. Jonathan made his choices, and they have nothing to do with me or my son." Pamela looked at Arthur, then back at me. "I understand, Grace. I just thought—" I offered a small, sad smile. "I appreciate it, Pamela, but my focus is on Arthur and our life now. What Jonathan does or doesn't do isn't my concern anymore." She nodded, seemingly understanding. "I hope you and Arthur are happy, Grace. You both deserve it." "Thank you. We are," I assured her, glancing at Arthur, now fully absorbed in his toys again. After Pamela left, I closed the door and leaned against it, taking a moment to breathe deeply. The past has a way of sneaking up on you, but I was determined to keep it at bay, ensuring our future remained bright and unaffected by the shadows of days gone by. But I was resolute in my determination not to let the shadows of the past darken the vibrant life I had carefully built for myself and my son. The park was alive that day, buzzing with the laughter of children and the distant barks of dogs at play. I watched Arthur, my heart swelling with pride as he dashed around energetically, his laughter mingling with the ambient sounds of joy. Suddenly, a familiar voice cut through the air, chilling my warm feelings. "Grace, is that you?" My heart sank as I turned around. It was Mary, my former mother-in-law, striding towards us with a fixated gaze on Arthur. "Mary," I greeted her coolly, "what are you doing here?" She ignored the frost in my voice, her eyes never straying from Arthur. "He's grown so much. He's your son, right?" "Yes, this is Arthur," I replied, subtly stepping between her and my son. Her eyes sparkled with an unsettling eagerness. "I was hoping to see him. After all, he's my grandson." A wave of irritation washed over me. "And why would you want to see him?" "Well, you know my other grandson," she began, her voice trailing off as her expression darkened. "He's not well. He's sick. It's just not the same. I want to be part of a healthy grandchild's life." Her words struck me harshly, a verbal slap. The disdain in her voice for her grandchild was shocking. "Mary," I said, my voice steel hard, "you have no right to be part of Arthur's life, not after everything that happened." "But Grace, that was all Jonathan's doing," she protested weakly. I shook my head dismissively. "You supported him. You turned against me when I was carrying your grandchild, and now you speak with such contempt about your other grandson just because he's sick. That's unforgivable." Mary's face hardened. "You can't keep me away from my grandson." "I can and I will," I declared firmly. "Arthur doesn't need someone in his life who values people based on their health. He will not be part of your twisted view of family." She looked like she wanted to argue further, but I cut her off. "This conversation is over. Stay away from us, Mary. Your presence is neither wanted nor welcomed." Taking Arthur's hand, I walked away, leaving Mary standing alone, her face a mix of anger and disbelief. As we walked, Arthur looked up at me, his innocent eyes brimming with questions. "Mommy, who was that lady?" "That was someone we used to know, sweetheart," I replied gently. "But she's not part of our lives anymore." Later, sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky with warm colors, I felt a profound sense of peace. Inside, Arthur's laughter echoed as he played, signaling that life had settled into a calm rhythm, the storms of the past now distant memories. "Mom, look what I made." Arthur's voice pulled me from my reverie as he rushed out, holding a drawing in his hands, a picture of the two of us smiling under a big, bright sun. "It's beautiful, Arthur," I said, pulling him into a hug. "You're quite the artist." He beamed with pride. "I want to put it on the fridge." "Let's do that," I smiled, following him inside. As we walked, I reflected on how far we'd come. There was a time. The weight of the past once seemed crushing, but now it felt more like a distant echo. Later that evening, after Arthur had drifted off to sleep, I sat quietly with a cup of tea, reflecting on the day's events. The phone's ring broke the silence, and I hesitated before answering. "Hello?" "Hey, Grace, it's Kayla. I just wanted to check in. How are you and Arthur doing?" "We're doing well, Kayla. Arthur's growing up so fast," I replied, a smile brightening my voice. "I heard about your run-in with Mary. Are you okay?" Her voice carried a blend of concern and warmth. I sighed. "Yes, it was unexpected, but I'm okay. It's just another reminder of the past." "I know it's tough, but you've come so far, Grace. You're strong, and you've built a wonderful life for you and Arthur," she said encouragingly. "Thanks, Kayla. It means a lot." Her words wrapped around me like a warm blanket. We talked for a while longer about everyday things, small, comforting snippets of life. This connection with my sister was a vital reminder of the support system I had, even when days seemed daunting. After hanging up, I walked to the living room where Arthur's drawing was displayed proudly on the fridge. Looking at it, I realized how much we both had grown. The pain and anger of the past had faded, making room for healing and new beginnings. I tiptoed to Arthur's room, watching him sleep peacefully. Leaning down, I kissed his forehead gently. "Good night, my little artist," I whispered softly. Back on the porch, I gazed at the stars emerging in the night sky. The echoes of the past were indeed fading, their hold on me loosening. In their place was hope, a quiet strength, and the unconditional love between a mother and her son. This new chapter was not just about moving on, but about thriving in the warmth of new beginnings and the comfort of enduring familial bonds. I remember feeling content with my life, earning a decent income and managing well, until one day I was taken aback. My credit card company contacted me to inform me of a $91,000 charge. I was utterly shocked because I didn't recognize this transaction. Immediately, I halted the payment. Around the same time, my husband Jason, who was traveling, called me numerous times. Despite the chaos, I took control of the situation. At 31, I'm now a manager at a company, and Jason, who is also 31 and my college sweetheart, and I have been married for 2 years. While many of our friends chose to leave their jobs post-marriage, I continued in my role. I earn more than Jason, which sometimes worries me about our future, especially considering the stability of his income. We maintain our financial independence, we each manage our own money, and equally share household expenses. This arrangement allows me the freedom to spend my leftover income as I see fit, which usually doesn't bother me since we are both working and our life together is going smoothly. However, just recently, while on a train ride home, I realized I might have overspent a bit as I glanced over a debit alert on my phone. I thought about checking for any unused subscriptions that might still be charging me, but that idea quickly vanished as I struggled to remember the password to my credit card portal. Finding motivation to sort this out is tough, and reaching the help center is a challenge. They operate from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays, exactly when most working people can't call. The long wait times during lunch hours don't help either. Yet, I'm reassured slightly by knowing that if there's a significant issue, like a charge over $40,000, the call center will reach out to me. This trust in the system makes me a bit complacent about contacting them myself. Meanwhile, online shopping serves as a brief escape from these and other work-related stresses. When I opened the package that had just been delivered, I briefly felt a surge of excitement. However, this feeling quickly dissipated as soon as I entered our living room. The scene inside shifted my mood from good to bad instantly. Socks scattered on the floor, empty cans on the table, and a random phone and sweater tossed carelessly on the couch. Yes, that was my husband lounging in a sweatshirt, seemingly oblivious to the mess. My husband has a habit of not cleaning up after himself, which often feels like he's purposely adding to the chaos at home. I pointed my phone at the couch and half jokingly, half exasperatedly said, "Hey, socks and empty cans, that's what I come home to. It's not that hard to clean up a bit or even make dinner if you're home before me." In response, he coolly remarked, "If you get home early, why don't you clean the house? Don't be so mad about it." This stung a bit. "I'm tired too when I get home," I retorted, trying to keep my tone light yet firm. "If you're not going to help clean, maybe you should consider whether you prefer working or doing chores." "Please, just drop it," he replied, not once but twice, signaling his annoyance without really feeling the weight of my words. I shot him a stern look, but he was too engrossed in his phone to notice my frustration. It felt unjust that I was shouldering a heavier load of chores and work. Was I being unreasonable? I wasn't sure, but I feared my confrontation might push him to be even more indifferent to our home's upkeep. Surprisingly, something shifted after our exchange. My husband started coming home late, even on days I arrived early. It seemed he had decided to put in extra hours at work. Perhaps, in his way, he was making an effort to address our imbalance. I was in a particularly good mood that day, so I threw myself into my chores with more energy than usual. My husband Jason has been really busy lately, which meant the housekeeping duties had mostly fallen to me. I hadn't really thought much about it until I found myself cleaning his room, which he hadn't tidied up in quite some time. As I entered his room, it was just as I expected. Empty bottles and cans were strewn everywhere, even on the bed. Amid the clutter, something caught my eye. There was a package, elegantly wrapped in gift paper, lying unobtrusively. Peering closer, I recognized the branding. It was from my favorite store. A flicker of excitement passed through me as I realized my birthday was just around the corner. Could this be a surprise gift from Jason? Despite my curiosity, I decided to respect the surprise, pretending I hadn't seen anything and leaving the package untouched. However, the gift never appeared as my birthday arrived and the day progressed. I casually asked Jason, "Do you know today's day?" "Oh, right, it's your birthday," he replied nonchalantly. "Did you forget?" I pressed, hoping for a hint of the surprise I had seen earlier. "No, I remember," he responded. "Aren't you happy with what I gave you last year? You know you're old enough not to need constant surprises." His words, so casually delivered, stung me. He went back to his room, leaving me puzzled and hurt. That mysterious box had sparked a glimmer of hope, but now it just made me uneasy. Suddenly, he announced a new twist. "I've got to go on a work trip abroad next week." This was unexpected. "A business trip to another country?" I repeated, incredulous. "Since when does your job involve international travel? You've never even been on a business trip outside the state." He simply replied, "They just gave me this assignment." The whole situation felt increasingly strange. What was really going on? I had been feeling quite accomplished lately, believing I deserved some recognition. "You should trust me," my husband had said, but his words were hard to take seriously after I'd discovered a mysterious gift-wrapped box in his room. On the day he left for his so-called business trip after waving him off in the early morning, my curiosity got the better of me. I searched under the bed where I'd seen the box, but it was gone. Doubt gnawed at me. This wasn't just a regular business trip, was it? With this uneasy thought, I dragged myself to work, but I was hardly in a state to focus. Several times my hands just stopped moving, my mind replaying the recent events over and over. "Hey, are you okay? You seem out of it today," a coworker inquired. "Oh yeah, I just didn't get enough sleep," I replied, trying to brush it off with a lighthearted excuse. Just then, my phone vibrated sharply. A strange number flashed on the screen. Normally, I would ignore such calls, but something inside me urged me to answer it this time. "Excuse me, I need to take this," I said, stepping outside to talk. It was the credit card company's call center on the line. As I listened, a flurry of thoughts raced through my mind about my husband, our recent issues, the necessity of sharing my password, and then the representative's words cut through my confusion. "This is from our debt protection service. It seems there has been a charge exceeding $40,000 on your account," the voice explained calmly. I was stunned by the information, a mix of disbelief and concern overwhelming me. What on earth was going on? The conversation with the operator intensified when she dropped another bombshell. Yes, there was a charge for $91,000. "That's impossible. Wait a second," I gasped, my heart racing. I dashed back to my desk, rifling through my wallet, only to find that my credit card was missing. "That's the card I meant to have with me," the operator clarified. "Pardon me, can you please halt that transaction?" I asked urgently, phone pressed tightly against my ear. "Yes, it's still pending, so we can stop it," she assured me, and a wave of relief washed over me. "And please, can you handle the stolen card issue immediately? I don't have it with me," I added. "Yes, sir, I'll take care of it right away," she responded. Even though the situation was partially resolved, the adrenaline didn't stop pumping through my veins. I hung up, my heart still pounding. "I'm sorry, I'm not in the right state to work. I need to leave early. It seems my credit card was stolen and almost misused, and I have a lot to sort out," I explained to my boss, who understood and allowed me to leave. I caught the train quickly, and as I checked my phone, I saw countless missed calls from my husband. It felt as though he was trying to confess something. I rushed home, threw off my shoes, dropped my bag, and went straight to my husband's office. His desk was cluttered, but what caught my eye was his search history, luxury cruises, and travel plans for two. These were definitely not work-related. I hadn't been invited to any such event. The so-called business trip was clearly a cover for something else. My heart sank as I realized the implications. Scrolling through my old emails for any clues, I noticed a name that stood out. Billy. "What the heck is this?" I muttered, my anger rising. I wanted to slam the keyboard in frustration, but instead, I forced myself to look for concrete proof of whatever was going on. My phone kept ringing incessantly as I pieced everything together. "Oh my God, just stop," I groaned, overwhelmed by the betrayal and chaos unfolding before me. In the turmoil, I decided to use the password given by the call center to check my credit card transaction history. I logged into my account and began scrolling through the records, my disbelief growing with each entry. There it was, a transaction for an expensive handbag brand that caught my eye. The pieces suddenly clicked. Jason had used my credit card to indulge his mistress, Olivia, and even funded a supposed business trip abroad. The realization left me stunned. I had ignored several calls, but now, gathering all my courage, I answered the phone. "You finally picked up after I tried so many times," my husband said, his voice anxious. He immediately started talking about the credit card. "Who's the card for?" I asked pointedly. He hesitated before replying. "You mean, whose card?" "Well, it's easier to use a card than cash abroad, especially on work trips." "Work trips? Or do you mean the luxury cruise and the getaway with Olivia?" I countered sharply. He tried to deflect. "Why are you asking about the cruise? That was for business. Entertainment. A fun time, Olivia. And the designer bag? Was Olivia happy with it? Are you seriously trying to justify this by pretending you don't know what's going on?" I pushed further, my voice steady but filled with pain. My husband faltered, the reality of the confrontation setting in. I understand, he repeated, his voice tinged with desperation as he attempted to grasp at excuses. "I know everything," I stated clearly. "You tried to spend $91,000 on a luxury cruise and a vacation package for couples. You've been using my credit card to lavish Olivia with gifts." After a pause, he finally admitted, "I'm sorry I cheated. I'm sorry, but I can't come home until you reactivate the credit card." His plea hung in the air, absurd and almost pitiful. "Do you really think an apology and admission are enough to make all of this go away?" I asked, the weight of his betrayal pressing down on me. The conversation had shifted irrevocably from mundane marital grievances to a stark, painful reckoning. Feeling utterly betrayed, I told my husband, Please spend the rest of your life at your resort," and then hung up the phone before he could respond. Almost immediately, my phone started buzzing nonstop. The incessant ringing drove me to the edge, prompting me to turn off the device to escape the noise. Soon after, an email notification popped up, informing me that my husband's return flight was scheduled for noon 5 days later. I seized this window of opportunity to set my affairs in order, deciding to resolve everything before he could set foot back home. The next day, as part of my plan, I began clearing out all his belongings from our house. On the second day, I gathered the courage to tell my in-laws about everything that had happened, showing them the proof of his infidelity and misuse of our finances. They were shocked and deeply apologetic. By the end of our conversation, they agreed to support me in getting a divorce, promised to ensure I would receive $2 million in alimony, and vowed to recover the funds my husband had frivolously spent. As the day of my husband's return approached, I received a call in the early evening from my in-laws, confirming that they had safely filed the divorce papers. Surprisingly, my soon-to-be ex-husband had only taken a credit card with him, leaving the rest of our finances untouched. The woman he was with, however, had given him $91,000. Enraged by the unfolding events, she changed her flight, departing for Singapore before him without his knowledge. I wondered why she hadn't just taken his plane ticket and visa and left him stranded. While pondering this, I learned from my in-laws that when my ex-husband returned to Singapore, he found the house empty and his connection to me severed, his calls going straight to voicemail. In a desperate attempt to find refuge, he went to my in-laws' house, where he faced significant repercussions for his actions. After everything that had unfolded, the final step was filing the divorce papers. My ex-husband had gotten himself into deeper trouble, and it didn't stop with our separation. The woman he had been seeing was now demanding that he return the $91,000 she had given him. I heard from my in-laws that after he repaid the money, they imposed strict conditions on him, almost as if he were back in high school. He was essentially under house arrest with a 15-hour curfew, and his every move being monitored by his own family, ensuring he paid off all the money he owed. In the midst of all this, I took legal action myself, filing a $15,000 claim against the other woman involved in the affair. With help from my in-laws, I gathered the necessary information to go after her financially, and once I did, it felt like the last piece of this painful puzzle was finally falling into place. It was a long and exhausting process, but when the claim went through, I felt a sense of closure. The legal side of things had been resolved, and it was time for me to focus on moving forward. When I returned to work the next day, my colleagues and bosses welcomed me back with surprising warmth and concern. Many of them had heard about my situation, and their kindness was palpable. "Hey, are you okay? If you want to talk about anything, I'm here," one of my colleagues offered gently. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone. I replied with a grateful smile, "Thank you, I'm doing all right. Just trying to get back into the swing of things. Maybe we can grab a drink after work? I'd appreciate the company." It felt good to make plans and to look forward to simple pleasures like a night out with friends. That evening, as we gathered at a local bar, the camaraderie felt soothing. We shared stories and laughs, and although the shadow of recent events lingered, it was overshadowed by the immediate warmth of friendly faces. As I sipped my beer, the bitterness of the past few months seemed to dissolve slightly with each sip. I poured out my heart about the ordeal, and my colleagues listened empathetically. "I'm just looking forward to putting all of this behind me," I confessed as the evening wound down. "I think I'm ready to move forward, to focus on the positives that the future holds." They raised their glasses to that, a silent acknowledgement of my resilience. "To new beginnings," they echoed. As I left the bar that night, a sense of closure mingled with newfound hope. The support of my work community had buoyed my spirits, and I felt a deep appreciation for their presence in my life. It was a reminder that even in the aftermath of betrayal and heartache, The kindness of others could light the way forward. As I looked ahead, I felt a cautious optimism. It was true that the past could not be changed, but the future was still mine to shape. With the legal matters settled and my boundaries firmly redrawn, I was slowly rebuilding a sense of normalcy. The path ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but I felt prepared to face them, bolstered by the support of friends and a renewed sense of self. Indeed, it seemed that better days were on the horizon. You seem to have come into a considerable sum, around $500 million, right? Now, everyone's excited and already making big plans. You're designing a luxurious home, and I hear there's even a dream kitchen in the works. Your mother-in-law sounds absolutely enchanted by the idea. Meanwhile, your husband has decided to leave his job to start a business using what he believes is Cheryl's inheritance. But hold on a minute. Cheryl hasn't actually received any inheritance yet. You're contemplating quitting your job and diving into construction, but something doesn't add up. Why rush into these projects without any actual funds? It's quite clear you've come into some money, but let's consider a family vacation before we dive headfirst into building a house. How does a trip to Hawaii sound? As suggested by your father-in-law, adding another layer of complexity to the mix. It's as if they're planning to use the money you inherited from your mother for whatever they desire. The thought of it is infuriating. You're incredibly upset, yet unsure of how to handle the situation. Let's rewind to a few months ago to understand better how things unfolded. My name is Cheryl, and I'm a 36-year-old high school teacher. My husband, Jerry, who is 1 year my senior, works in an office. We've been married for 8 years, and shortly after we said our vows, our daughter Sarah was born. Life since then has been a hectic mix of work and family responsibilities. Today, we're planning to visit the hospital to see my mother. "Hey, Grandma, it's been a while," Sarah says as we arrive. My mom greets her with a gentle smile and runs her fingers through Sarah's hair. I notice she looks frailer, and her once vibrant face now seems a bit subdued. There's a man in a suit standing beside her bed. He gives me a nod when our eyes meet and then quietly exits the room. "Mom, who was that?" I ask, curiosity piqued. "Oh, just someone I know, nothing to worry about," she reassures me, her voice calm. She then turns her attention to us. "How have you been, Cheryl? And how's Jerry doing?" Her soft blue eyes sparkle as she smiles, reminding me of the strength she's always shown. She met my dad while he was working overseas in the import-export business. Moving to Canada to marry him, she embarked on the challenging journey of raising a child in a new country. Despite the difficulties, they managed it together, a testament to their resilience and love. Growing up, my mom was my biggest teacher, instilling in me the values and knowledge that now enable me to be a teacher myself. I'm deeply grateful for the loving and supportive upbringing my parents provided. Sadly, my father passed away a few years ago, and since then it's just been my mom, coping with her health issues and frequent hospital stays. She eventually passed on the family business to a relative and now spends most of her days in the quiet of the hospital room. "I'm doing well, Mom. Is there anything you need?" I asked during one of our visits. "Just having you and Sarah here is more than enough," she replies with a smile that warms my heart. After a bit of catching up, Sarah, who's 7 and at that challenging age of growing independence, eagerly shares updates about school and the latest book she's read. I'm proud of how she's developing. Even without my biased mom goggles, I see her as a bright and honest child. When Sarah and I return home, Jerry greets us with, "Hey, welcome back. How's my mom doing?" "Same as always," I respond, and then inquire about his day. "How was your seminar? I heard it was a good one." Lately, Jerry's been attending seminars on quitting his job to start a side hustle. It seems he's chasing after more money, even though we're managing fine with my teacher's salary. I'm not too thrilled about his growing obsession with financial gains, which I suspect he picked up from his parents. They've always been rather frugal. often asking us for small loans and rarely indulging in giving gifts, even for occasions like Christmas. Thankfully, they live far enough away that our interactions are limited. Despite this, Jerry is helpful around the house, which makes things manageable. I find solace in our simple life with my mom, Jerry, and Sarah. Then, one day, a call from the hospital changed everything. Mom's health had suddenly deteriorated, and she was in critical condition. We rushed to be by her side. With her last bit of strength, she looked at me and said, "Cheryl, I've always wanted you to be happy. Take care of Sarah." Her words echoed in my mind as we faced the reality of her fragile state. "She means everything. I love you." Those were her final words. My mom, who had devoted her life to raising me and had adored Sarah more than anything, left us with these tender words. At her funeral, seeing her serene expression, all I could manage were tears, and Sarah, standing by my side, cried alongside me. Sometime after Mom passed away, an envelope from a law firm arrived, marked with an unfamiliar return address. Inside, to my astonishment, was my mother's will, which left everything to me. Mom and I had never discussed the topic of inheritance, so the contents of the will came as a complete surprise. Holding the letter, I decided it was best to visit the law firm on my own to understand the details. Upon arriving, I was greeted by Mr. Roy, the attorney. "Hi, I'm Mr. Roy," he introduced himself. He wore glasses, the same man who had been in the hospital room when I visited my mom. "You were there when I visited my mom," I stated, recognizing him immediately. "Yes, we met briefly," Mr. Roy confirmed. "Your mom entrusted me with something very important," he added softly, his words almost bringing me to tears again. $500 million, I blurted out in shock upon hearing the figure he mentioned. "Yes, Cheryl. When your dad passed, you let your mom handle all the inheritance. Now, with what she's saved and what she's left you, after taxes, that's the sum," Mr. Roy explained. I was aware my parents had been well off, but I had never involved myself with their financial matters or asked for money after getting married. "It's overwhelming," I admitted, feeling slightly dizzy from the revelation. "But I see it as a sign of love from my mom." "I'll leave it in your hands, Mr. Roy. My mom cared about you deeply, and she asked me to assist you if needed. Feel free to talk to me about anything," Mr. Roy offered kindly. "Thank you, I really appreciate it," I responded, nodding to Mr. Roy before leaving the room. As the 50th day memorial of my mother approached, Jerry, my husband, began to mention my mother's inheritance frequently. He knew they had been wealthy when we married, but his constant probing became increasingly uncomfortable, especially during my mourning period. Whenever I asked him to drop the subject, he would oblige, only to subtly bring it up again later. His persistence felt intrusive and out of place as I tried to navigate my grief. At her mother's memorial, the atmosphere was already emotionally charged when Cheryl's in-laws added another layer of complexity. Her father-in-law approached her with an offer. "Cheryl, if you're worried about handling the inheritance, we're here to help. We've been through our inheritance disputes. They can get pretty complicated, especially with unmarried siblings involved." Her mother-in-law joined in, eager to assist. "We're here for you, Cheryl." Despite their offers, Cheryl felt uneasy about involving them, as she had never relied on them in financial matters before. She managed only a vague response as they seemed to assume she needed their help. 2 months after her mother's passing, Jerry broke his silence on the matter. His sudden inquiry, "Have you gotten your mom's inheritance yet?" sent a chill through Cheryl. She hesitated before replying, "Not yet, it's a complicated process." But Jerry, seemingly frustrated, quickly ended the conversation and went to bed, leaving Cheryl with a sinking feeling. The next day, while Cheryl and her daughter Sarah were cleaning up after dinner, the doorbell rang. Sarah scurried to answer it, and Cheryl, peeking from the kitchen, saw her in-laws arriving with Jerry just returning from work. "Why are they here?" Cheryl whispered to Sarah, feeling a mix of surprise and anxiety. "It's okay, Mom. I'll go to my room," Sarah said, dashing off nervously. As Cheryl greeted her in-laws at the door, her father-in-law, Mr. Roy, burst in cheerfully, not waiting for an invitation. He grabbed a beer from the fridge and announced, "We're here to celebrate. You inherited over $500 million. We've even started building a duplex for all of us to live in, complete with your dream kitchen. Be happy, Cheryl." Her mother-in-law added dreamily, "Just imagine a beautiful duplex." Cheryl stood there, overwhelmed not only by the news of her inheritance, but also by their forwardness and the realization that decisions were being made about her life and finances without her consent. The situation was quickly spiraling beyond her control. I found out that Jerry had unilaterally decided to put down half of our savings and some of the money his parents had saved up for a loan, all in his name, but expected it to be covered by my yet-to-be-received inheritance. He beamed with a mix of pride and anticipation as he announced his plans. "I've quit my job and I'm starting a business with your inheritance," he said, as if it was all settled. I was stunned. "Wait a minute, what's going on? I haven't even received any inheritance yet, and you're talking about quitting your job and building a duplex?" "Let's not beat around the bush. It's clear you have an inheritance," Jerry argued, suggesting a celebratory trip to Hawaii amidst the unfolding chaos. As the conversation continued, it became evident that Jerry and my mother-in-law were on the same page, both eerily aligned with Mr. Roy's plans. Jerry, with a tone tinged with condescension, laughed. "You're being miserly, Cheryl. We looked into it because you kept saying you hadn't received the inheritance yet. If you don't claim it within 2 months, you can't refuse it. So, you've definitely inherited, right?" With everyone assuming control over funds I hadn't even claimed, they started making plans for living comfortably off my supposed inheritance. Over $500 million, according to my father-in-law's rough estimate. "Thanks, Mom, and make sure to arrange money for the duplex and my capital," Jerry said, seemingly oblivious to how overwhelming and inappropriate his demands were. Hearing Jerry speak like that left me reeling. I was furious and deeply hurt by their entitlement to my mother's legacy, intended for me, not for their lavish fantasies. Sarah, who was still in the other room, was my main concern as I tried to maintain my composure. Needing to escape, I excused myself. "I'm stepping out for a bit." They hardly noticed, engrossed in their discussion about the inheritance. I left the house and walked to the local hilltop park. The night air was brisk, and as I reached the solitude of the park, tears began to flow. Alone, I cried silently, the cool air mixing with the hot tears streaming down my face as I grappled with feelings of frustration and exploitation. Amidst the turmoil, thoughts of a potential divorce surfaced, but the image of Sarah held me back. My mother's parting words, "Take care of Sarah above all else," echoed in my mind, grounding me in my resolve to protect her happiness and well-being above everything else. As I wept on the hilltop, someone approached me unexpectedly. Startled, I looked up to find a gentle presence whose soft words brought a measure of calm. 5 days after that night, feeling a newfound resolve, I called my husband and in-laws to meet at a restaurant that offered private rooms. As soon as I arrived, Jerry blurted out, "So, you're back home. Did you withdraw the money, Cheryl? You shouldn't just leave without telling your husband." Ignoring their insinuations, I placed a document on the table. It was a filled-out divorce notice. Jerry's face drained of color as he stammered, "What? What's this?" "I want a divorce," I said calmly but firmly, cutting through the tension. Jerry's panic was evident, and my in-laws exchanged anxious looks. "You can't just leave us like this," Jerry exclaimed. "Ever since you inherited from your mom, you've become so greedy," he accused. I looked them straight in the eyes. "Ever since I inherited, you've been out of control, quitting jobs, planning to live off my money, using my savings to fund my dreams, and now planning extravagant trips without consulting me. Tell me, who really changed when the money came into the picture?" "You can't just divorce me out of nowhere," Jerry argued, his tone desperate. Half of everything is mine, including our savings and half of the inheritance. As they pressed in with their demands, the door suddenly opened. Sarah and attorney Mr. Roy entered, bringing a sudden hush over the room. "Dad, Grandpa, Grandma, you should know better," Sarah said with a maturity beyond her years. "Mom's inheritance isn't shared property, right, Mr. Roy?" Mr. Roy nodded, stepping forward. "I'm attorney Mr. Roy, and Cheryl's mom entrusted me with her legal matters." "I've been advising Cheryl," he stated formally, leaving Jerry flustered. "Indeed," Mr. Roy continued, "inherited property isn't shared. It's not subject to division." "What? That can't be right. Is this a mistake?" Jerry stuttered, confusion written all over his face. Their reactions confirmed their deep-seated belief that they were entitled to my inheritance. This misunderstanding, this entitlement, was all the more reason for me to pursue the divorce. I needed to protect not only my future, but also Sarah's, ensuring our lives were free from this toxic sense of entitlement. "I'll stick by you no matter what," my husband shouted, his eyes bloodshot, his voice disregarding the gravity of the situation. "Stop it," Sarah intervened calmly, a quiet strength in her voice that cut through the tension. "Ever since Mom inherited, Dad hasn't thought about her once. Grandpa only cares about the money. They never even mention me. I can't see them as a family anymore." Jerry and my in-laws were visibly shocked by Sarah's words. When the inheritance issue had first upset me, Sarah had been the one to comfort me, saying, "Dad, Grandpa, and Grandma are wrong. They're trying to take Grandma's legacy. Mom, I'm with you. Let's face this together." Bolstered by her support, I contacted Mr. Roy, our attorney, to arrange this very meeting. Sarah's declaration seemed to strike a chord, but Jerry attempted to sway her. "That's not true, Sarah. Dad wants what's best for you. Wouldn't you be happier with us?" My in-laws chimed in, "Children shouldn't interfere." With a look of resolute frustration, Sarah responded, "I'm going with Mom. I can't stay with you anymore." And she turned away decisively. "We've made our decision. Sarah and I will leave," I stated calmly, which only fueled Jerry's anger. "I've never cheated, and you can't force a divorce. I'll get a lawyer. We'll get that money," he threatened, his desperation palpable. "I'll handle it from here," Mr. Roy intervened quietly, his tone steady and reassuring. "The crux here is whether there are serious grounds for ending the marriage, quitting his job, using our savings without consent, making decisions unilaterally, and Sarah's expressed distress. These are multiple arguments to support our case. Additionally, your daughter has recorded evidence of all of you pressuring Cheryl for her inheritance. That should serve as compelling evidence." Jerry slumped, defeated, and my in-laws' faces went pale. After that, Sarah and I left the restaurant, our path forward clear. A year later, thanks to Mr. Roy's diligent efforts, my divorce from Jerry was finalized. Sarah and I moved into my mother's old house, finding peace and a fresh start, far from the conflicts and the greed that had marred the previous years. The strength and clarity that Sarah showed that day in the restaurant had set us on this new path, one that we walked together, strengthened by each other's resolve. Despite our fresh start, remnants of the past continued to surface, complicating our peace. Jerry sent numerous letters, each one a plea for reconciliation. More disconcertingly, he was seen near Sarah's school, an act that felt too close for comfort. Concerned for our safety and privacy, we sought legal measures. With the steadfast help of Mr. Roy, our attorney, we managed to secure a restraining order against Jerry. This decisive action helped dampen the unwanted intrusions and restored a measure of peace in our lives. In our challenges, we heard through the grapevine that Jerry and my in-laws had proceeded with their plans and built the duplex they had envisioned, yet life in their new home was not as idyllic as they had hoped. My in-laws, previously retired, found themselves compelled to rejoin the workforce, taking up positions at a local factory to make ends meet. Jerry, despite his earlier schemes for a comfortable life funded by my inheritance, ended up undertaking manual labor. Neighbors whispered that the walls of the duplex often echoed with the sounds of constant arguments, making the family somewhat unpopular in their new community. Meanwhile, Sarah and I continued to forge a serene existence away from the tumult of my former family ties. Our home was a sanctuary of peace and mutual support. Recently, Sarah's aspirations reached across oceans. She expressed a strong desire to study abroad in the homeland of my mother, a place I held dear in my heart. This idea struck a chord with both of us, as it presented a chance to completely sever the lingering ties with Jerry and his intrusive attempts at reconciliation. Motivated by Sarah's dreams and our shared longing for a fresh start, we decided to move overseas. We used a portion of my mother's inheritance to facilitate this new chapter in our lives, a decision I believe my mother would have wholeheartedly supported. Sarah adapted wonderfully to her new school, thriving academically and socially in a way that filled me with immense pride. I, too, found fulfillment in securing a position as a teacher in our new home, embracing the opportunity to shape young minds while also rebuilding our lives. As we settled into our routine in this new country, the tranquility and stability we experienced were profound. Each peaceful day reinforced our decision to leave behind the past and embrace the future. With hope in our hearts, we look forward to continuing our journey in this new land, confident in the support we have for each other and optimistic about what the future holds. Hello, my name is Lisa, and I'm a 30-year-old office worker. My husband George, who's 32, and I were introduced by a mutual friend, and we've now been married for 3 years. As an only child, my upbringing was quite protected. I attended a public school until middle school, after which I transferred to an all-girls private school, continuing there until college. The dynamics of an all-girls school meant we fostered deep friendships, though I wasn't particularly focused on dating. In my early 20s, I casually dated a few guys, but I never encountered anyone I could envision marrying. As the years passed, I found myself suddenly in my 30s, which alarmed my parents, especially my dad. He began encouraging me to meet men through matchmaking websites, and that's how I met George. After several meetings, George expressed his feelings for me. He's a kind-hearted man who deeply respects his parents, values that resonated with me, leading to our decision to marry. Our wedding came together swiftly with the enthusiastic support of our friends and family. However, married life brought its challenges. Shortly after our wedding, George's father fell ill and passed away, prompting George to devote a great deal of time to his mother. Though I understand and respect his dedication, it sometimes feels as though his mother is his priority, which can be frustrating. Despite this, I've learned to accept and adapt to the complexities of marriage. Recently, I've found joy in participating in sweepstakes, winning small items like makeup and snacks. But my biggest win came when I won a pair of tickets to Florida, the first major prize I've ever won. George was away traveling with his mother at the time, so I decided to give this wonderful opportunity to my parents. Excited, I rushed to their house to surprise them with the news of our trip. My mother was thrilled, expressing how long it had been since their last trip abroad. However, my dad wasn't as enthusiastic about the trip. "I've got work commitments, Lisa," he explained. Although he had some paid leave remaining, he stressed, "This is a busy season for our industry, and as the department head, it's not easy for me to take time off." My mom then suggested, "Lisa, if you can manage to get leave, why don't you and I go?" I thought it over and agreed with her. It was too great an opportunity to miss. With my dad unable to join us, I decided to speak with my boss about taking time off. Fortunately, the workload was light at the moment, and my boss granted me the leave without any issue. After work, I stopped by a bookstore near the station to pick up a travel guide on Florida, excited about the upcoming trip. As I approached our house, I noticed the lights were on. George must have returned home early. I better hurry up with dinner, I thought as I walked in. Instead of George's shoes by the door, I saw a pair of women's shoes that I recognized. My mother-in-law's presence was unexpected. "Lisa, what's the meaning of leaving the house empty at this hour?" she scolded as I entered. "Oh, I didn't realize you were here," I replied, slightly taken aback. "It doesn't matter if I'm here or not. It's time for George to be home and you should be preparing dinner and getting things ready for him," she lectured. Living nearby and having a spare key, courtesy of George, she often visited unannounced, which I found challenging. Since her husband had passed away, she perhaps felt more alone, but her surprise visits and sense of entitlement were tough to handle. Moreover, she clung to old-fashioned views about a wife's role and disapproved of me working. Every interaction with her seemed to involve some criticism or snide remark, making it difficult for me to feel comfortable around her. "Why the long face and the detour instead of coming straight home?" she continued, scrutinizing my every move. "You're such a useless wife," she criticized as she attempted to see what I had purchased. "Please stop," I objected, trying to stand my ground. However, she dismissed my protest and snatched the bag containing the travel guide. "What's all this? What do you plan to do in Florida? How extravagant," she exclaimed. "No, it's a prize I won. I'm giving it as a gift to my parents," I explained. "Well, nobody told me about this," she retorted. Just then, George walked in. "I'm back. What's going on?" he asked. "Welcome home, George. Lisa won a trip to Florida," my mother-in-law quickly informed him. "How thoughtless of you to give it to Lisa's parents without discussing it first. I would have loved to go," George said. "I didn't know about the trip to Florida either." "I was thinking of giving it to my parents," I responded. "How many people can go on this trip?" George inquired. "It's for 2 people," I replied. "You should have told me beforehand. I would have loved to go too. Why are you making decisions on your own?" George questioned. "I thought about going with just the 2 of us, but this time I wanted to give it to my parents," I explained. "You're mistaken. This time Mom and I are going and you're staying home," George declared firmly, shutting down my protests. "No way, I won this. I'm going to give it as a gift to my parents," I insisted. "We can plan something else another time. Right, Mom wants to go, so please try to understand," I pleaded. "What are you even saying? You just went on a trip with your mom not long ago." "Why can't I use my win for a trip?" I argued. Suddenly, George dropped a bombshell. "If you don't like it, we can get a divorce." The mention of divorce from my husband used as a threat left me feeling a wave of detachment toward him. "Fine, do as you please," I responded, deciding to step back. My husband and mother-in-law, oblivious to my inner turmoil, seemed pleased with themselves. "You should have been more understanding from the start," they chided. Ignoring their smug remarks, I began to consider my next steps. The following day, I sought counsel from my parents, sharing the ordeal with them. My mom, who had been excited about the trip, seemed disappointed, but understood the situation. "I understand if that's how it is. We can't help it. It's better to avoid any tension between you 2, so don't worry," she reassured me. Feeling guilty about letting her down, I decided to make things right. During my lunch break, I called the airline and requested to change the trip to Florida to include my husband and mother-in-law instead. However, the operator explained that once the reservation is made, changes aren't allowed. The tickets were strictly for the winner, as specified in the documents they had sent me. Realizing my oversight, I informed the airline operator that I would decline the prize. I decided not to disclose this to my husband or anyone else, reasoning that if they were truly keen on going, they could purchase their tickets. That evening, when my husband returned from work, he eagerly brought up the trip. "Hey, Lisa, did you call the airline? Did you tell them we're going to Florida with Mom?" he asked. I handed him the documents and the tickets. "Here, take a look at these. All the details are right here. It's important to read them," I urged, knowing full well he might not bother. As expected, he merely glanced at them before setting them aside. "Try to see this as a kind gesture for your mom," I suggested. "Sure, I'm more than happy to stay home. I can't wait to see their reactions," he agreed. On the day of the trip, George seemed unusually tense, a sense of unease palpable in his demeanor. When the departure day finally arrived, George and his mother faced unexpected delays at the airport. "What's going on?" "Can you explain this?" he demanded, his confusion and frustration directed at me. The airline representative calmly explained, "As we've mentioned, these tickets are non-transferable, and if the winner isn't present, they become invalid. This is clearly outlined in our policy. Anyone else attempting to use them would need to pay the full fare." George and his mother had already committed to luxury hotels, stretching their budget thin, and now at the airport counter they encountered another hiccup. "I'm terribly sorry, but there seems to be an issue. Could you please try using a different payment method the attendant requested? That's impossible. This card has been working perfectly fine." "Why is this happening now?" George exclaimed in frustration. The attendant advised, "I'm afraid we can't diagnose the problem here. You may want to contact your card issuer for assistance." With no other option, George had to use another credit card. Later, he reached out to me, perplexed and annoyed. "Hey, what's happening? The tickets you gave us aren't usable." This situation left George and his mother to deal with a series of setbacks that they hadn't anticipated, revealing the consequences of not paying attention to the details I had tried to point out. George's voice was tense over the phone. "And now my credit card has been declined," he explained. "Did you bother reading the fine print on the ticket? It clearly states they're invalid if the winner isn't present. And as for your credit card issue, that's news to me," I retorted. "Not your card, George clarified. "Well, I've reported my card lost. I couldn't find it in my wallet, so I suspected you might have taken it. Thankfully, it hasn't been misused," I explained. "That's not amusing. You won't get away with this when we're back," George threatened. "That's entirely your own doing. What you did amounts to theft," I countered. "You know what, woman? I'm divorcing you. Get out," George declared angrily. "Fine, just as I expected you'd say." "As you wish, I'll agree to the divorce," I replied calmly. Truth be told, I had already planned to leave for my parents' house before George demanded I go. I had already packed my bags, using the paid leave I had taken for this trip. As I left the house, I made sure to take the passbook and seal it so he couldn't access our savings. I also informed the neighbors that we would be getting divorced. Upon reviewing our savings for potential division in the event of a divorce, I discovered that the funds had been depleted multiple times. I had no recollection of making these withdrawals, indicating that George was responsible. Further investigation, comparing the withdrawal dates with my daily blog entries, revealed that the money was withdrawn during the period when George and my mother-in-law were on vacation. I confided in my parents about George's proposition for divorce, his unauthorized use of my credit card, and his utilization of our joint savings for the trip with my mother-in-law. As I recounted the situation, my parents' expressions shifted from concern to sternness. I was in disbelief over George's actions and deeply hurt. During a heartfelt conversation, my father apologized profoundly. "I'm deeply sorry. It's my fault for arranging your marriage," he said, his disappointment in George palpable. With a sense of responsibility, he added, "This falls on my shoulders. Leave it to me," reassuring me of his support. My father held a high-ranking position at the parent company of George's employer and was sometimes involved in conducting audits, although another colleague typically handled them. Given the circumstances, my father rearranged his schedule to personally audit George's company. During this audit, he seized the opportunity to discuss the situation with George's superior, an executive at the subsidiary. They met for a meal, during which George's superior was visibly nervous, trying to curry favor with my father, aware of the hierarchical structure and the importance of making a good impression. Over dinner, my father broached the topic of my ongoing divorce, explaining the situation. "In fact, my daughter is going through a divorce. It appears that the main issue stemmed from her husband's excessive dependence on his mother. If it were just that, I might have advised her to persevere, but it seems he also misused my daughter's credit card and depleted her savings without her consent. Under such circumstances, I couldn't in good conscience recommend reconciliation," he explained. Then, shifting the conversation towards George's work performance subtly, he inquired, "By the way, your subordinate, or rather, former son-in-law, I suppose, is George. How has his performance been lately?" "It's a busy time, but I haven't seen him much around the office," George's superior responded, clearly troubled by the revelations and the implications of the audit. The discovery of my impending divorce and George's misdeeds prompted George's superior to consider a closer examination of George's conduct at work, suspecting that it might reveal more discrepancies. To handle the divorce proceedings efficiently, my father recommended a lawyer known for expertise in such matters. "I'll arrange for a lawyer to handle the divorce proceedings. You'll receive written confirmation soon covering matters like alimony and property division," I informed George, feeling somewhat relieved to be taking concrete steps. George's superior, now aware of the situation and its potential impact on the company, assured me that he would not let the issue slide, hinting at taking appropriate actions based on what the further investigation might reveal about George's conduct. Following George and his mother's trip to Florida, tensions remained high. Upon their return, George visited my parents' house where I was staying. He seemed desperate and disheveled. "Lisa, what's this certified mail about? I'm strapped for cash. I can't afford to pay any alimony, and this property division, it's just a marital spat. There's no need to take it this far. I've apologized, so please come back," George pleaded. "What are you saying? Have you even read the contents of the certified mail? Your mother's constant mental abuse, not to mention depleting our savings and attempting to use my credit card without permission? There's no way we can reconcile, right?" I countered. "Please don't say that. Since you left, it's been difficult for both Mom and me. Have you been receiving icy stares from the neighbors, or have there been issues at work?" George inquired, his demeanor stiffening. "I suppose I hit the nail on the head," I remarked. "How did you— well, who knows? What do you think the reason might be? If you reflect on your actions, you might understand," I replied. "I can't reconcile with you, and you'll have to face the consequences. Prepare yourself. Also, please communicate through the attorney from now on. If you persist in lingering, I'll involve the security company," George warned sternly. When I mentioned involving the security company, George finally relented and left with a heavy heart. In truth, everything George had come pleading about was orchestrated by my father and me. Before returning to my parents' home, I went to our neighbors and spun a tale about being kicked out by my husband and mother-in-law after they stole the plane tickets I had won in a lottery drawing. Leveraging my past experience in the drama club during my student years, my performance was remarkably convincing. Since my husband and mother-in-law returned from their Florida trip, rumors and gossip have swirled around them in the neighborhood. My mother-in-law was mortified to learn from a local busybody that she was being shunned. The community's cold reception only deepened the troubles George and his mother faced, making their return anything but peaceful. Amid swirling rumors about me taking my daughter-in-law's winning travel tickets and then casting her out, it's time for everyone to hear the complete truth. Following the uproar, my father felt compelled to start an inquiry at my husband's workplace. What came to light was quite unsettling. My husband, who also was a son-in-law to a senior department head at the main company, was found guilty of misusing his position. He would often take unscheduled leaves during peak work times to travel with his mother, routinely came in late or left early, and was even caught embezzling funds from the company. Given the gravity of his misconduct, he was immediately terminated from his position. The company also took a firm stand by announcing to all staff that the era of preferential treatment for family members of the management was over. Amidst these professional upheavals, the personal front was also tumultuous. With the help of a competent lawyer hired by my father, my divorce proceedings went on without a hitch, and I was soon legally single again. The financial settlement was just. The savings eroded by my husband's recklessness were split equitably, ensuring I received my rightful share. Throughout this ordeal, I kept a detailed blog that captured the emotional abuse I endured. These writings were instrumental in validating my experiences during the legal proceedings. Feeling vindicated after securing justice against my husband and his mother, I chose not to dwell on the past but to celebrate my newfound freedom. With the financial settlement from the divorce, I planned a much-needed vacation. Aligning with my father's company holiday schedule, we decided on Florida. Considering my mother's liking for the destination, we meticulously planned our vacation, looking forward to days filled with exploring the pristine beaches and vibrant coral reefs, engaging in retail therapy, and enjoying a rejuvenating family getaway. This trip was also a way for me to reconnect with my parents and repair the emotional strain my divorce had placed on them. It was a time to make up for the past and build new, joyful memories. Though thoughts of my previous marriage were now behind me, I remained hopeful about the future, open to the possibilities of new relationships and adventures. With a heart full of excitement for the days ahead, I cherished the present moments of happiness and looked forward to whatever the future might hold.